Arguably the biggest sporting event of the last week or two has been the Winter Olympics over in Pyeongchang, and while watching these events, I couldn't help but wonder what happened to Olympic video games. The Olympic genre in video games has a long history, dating back to 1983's Track and Field, which was the first game to adapt Olympic sports into video game form. Since then, every major console generation has had its fair share of Olympic video games, but it wasn't until the 1992 Olympics that officially licensed titles became the norm. The Olympic branding became a big deal with Sydney 2000, and for the next 12 years, titles would release every 2 years to coincide with either a summer or winter games. It wasn't just the more realistic simulation games being made either. In 2007, Sega released Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games, which was the first of 5 titles in this series that focused more on fun, arcade gameplay adaptations of the Olympic sports, perfectly suited to both the characters and the Nintendo platforms they were released for. Every 2 years, you could count on another Olympic video game tie-in being released. That was up until London 2012, which was the last to receive the video game treatment, with neither the Summer Olympics in Rio 2016 or the Winter Olympics in Pyeongchang 2018 getting a video game adaptation. So there's a number of reasons as to why Olympic video games may have been left behind, one of which is the release schedule itself. The sports video game landscape is somewhat unique in that it relies heavily on release timing, probably more so than other video game genres. Games such as FIFA, NBA 2K, and even smaller sports titles like AFL Evolution attempt to time their releases to be just in time for the new season. It's when fans' interest is at its highest, and therefore they can not only get the sales of the die-hard fans, but also the more casual fans of the sport who may have been caught up in the excitement of the new season. This is the same for Olympic video games as well, but the problem for these games is that Olympics of any sort only come around every 2 years, and only last for a few weeks. This means that video games have a tiny release window where they can capitalize on the interest of the Olympics, as after these 2 or so weeks of competition, people just aren't all that interested in the Olympics or Olympic video games. It's a similar type of problem that faced superhero movie tie-in games that were often rushed to hit a release date rather than being given the time to be made into the best games they could be. Another issue for Olympic video games is the sheer number of events and sports. It takes developers years and multiple iterations of working on a sports title to be able to properly replicate the complexities of real-life sports. So you can imagine just how difficult it would be to try and do this for Olympic video games, which can feature any number of different sports, each with their own complexities and permutations. If you've ever played an Olympic video game, you'd know that the gameplay often turns into nothing more than a series of minigames and button mashes, and no doubt the major reason behind this is because the developers just can't afford to focus too much on one particular sport. After all, if you bought a game based on the Summer Olympics and it had amazing swimming gameplay, but that's all it included, you'd be pretty disappointed. Essentially, that's the trade-off. You can't have insanely in-depth gameplay for each event, while still having a wide enough variety and selection of sports and events. It's usually this average gameplay that results in these video games receiving poor reviews from critics. An interesting side note here is that the extreme sports game Steep, which includes snowboarding and skiing, had a Road to the Winter Olympics release in 2017. Perhaps this could be the way forward. We'll see more games designed specifically around particular sports, and then we could have special releases or DLC in Olympic years. So guys, let us know in the comments what you think about Olympic video games. Are they a pointless endeavour, or have you been caught up in the hype and wish there was a tie-in game for this year's Olympics? We'd love to hear your thoughts and ideas, so sound away in the comments below. Also be sure to like, subscribe, and check us out on our other social media platforms. You can find those links in the description box.